Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 Our Pocono Waters Informational Webinar Series. Our Pocono Waters campaign is unifying the community while educating citizens, business leaders, and local leaders about the importance of protecting exceptional value or EV streams, highlighting the many ways that clean streams and economic development coexist in the region known for its natural beauty and booming tourism industry. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and we want to hear from you. So please take the pledge to defend Our Pocono Waters on our website at www.ourpoconowaters.org. For more information, you can contact us at ourpoconowaters@gmail.com. Throughout the course of this webinar, please keep all your questions into the Q&A box, which you can find in the toolbar for the Zoom webinar or in the chat, and we will answer them at the end of the presentation. Now, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Diane Kripkes from PA Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. She will be diving into the statewide outdoor recreation plan that just finished up last month. Diane, I'll turn it over to you.
So Emily, can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Diane Kripkes with DCNR's Bureau of Recreation and Conservation, and I am thrilled to share with you Pennsylvania's recently adopted outdoor recreation plan. It was just approved by the National Park Service on Monday. So you are the first audience that we are sharing the approved document. And we welcome the opportunity to give you this high-level, quick walk through an 18-month planning process. This is Pennsylvania's plan. This is not DCNR's plan. This is not Diane's plan. This is Pennsylvania's plan. And we are looking for as many partners as possible to help us implement the plan. And we heard from a lot of voices in the planning process. Collected a lot of data, and I'm going to give you the sound bites today. And if you want more information, I'll give you the web link at the end of the presentation. But this is just a kind of a commercial of a lot of information and a very packed plan with a lot of information to share. So when we first talked about this webinar, it was back in June before the plan was officially approved. And we were going to ask you for input about the plan and any questions you had or any changes that you would suggest. So this time around, we're going to pose a couple other questions. And this plan was approved in a draft stage by the National Park Service pre-COVID. So back in March, we had submitted it to the National Park Service. We do this plan so that Pennsylvania is eligible for land and water conservation funding money. And we're expecting about $12 million of federal funding to come to Pennsylvania in 2021, which we're going to need it considering all the challenges that we have. So that's one of the reasons we do this plan. And so we do need to get federal approval. Now we need to look at implementing this plan in a post-COVID or a current COVID environment, and certainly welcome any suggestions that you have or any reactions you have, and encourage you to include them in the comment field as we're going through this presentation. And we also developed this plan before Black Lives Matter protests and before a lot of the situation we've been facing in the spring. You'll see that we've been working on a Recreation for All concept for over 2 years now. But we do need to continue to foster a more welcoming outdoor environment. And again, looking for all hands on deck to help us figure out how to do that. For the first time in a planning process, we crafted a 20-year vision. So we're hoping by 2040 that we will have enjoyable outdoor recreation, welcoming to all and accessible in every Pennsylvania community. This outdoor recreation plan focuses just on what it says. It doesn't deal with indoor recreation. It's not a stewardship plan. It's not a state park plan. It's a plan for how Pennsylvanians can better experience the outdoors. There are 5 priority areas. Each of the areas have recommendations, and we have a total of 70 actions. I'm not going through any of the actions today. I may throw in a couple of initiatives that we have with implementing, but for the most part, I'm going to be staying pretty high level with the 20 recommendations. We heard from over 12,000 Pennsylvanians in the planning process, and we did it through a number of different survey methods, and we worked with the Penn State Center for Survey Research and did polling, so that those results are statistically valid at the state level. We had an online survey open to what we call our outdoor enthusiasts, our outdoor enthusiast fan club, but we had over 8,000 responses to that survey last summer. We surveyed local park and recreation directors, county commissioners, chief elected officials, mayors. We had over 1,000 providers provide input into this plan. And we knew from past experience that we would have to work extra hard to hear from non-white audiences. So we did focus groups for both Blacks and Hispanics. And then lastly, Pennsylvania has a very rich GIS system now, which we didn't have 5 years ago. So we have a GIS layer of our local parks, over 6,100 of them. We have a GIS layer of 12,000 miles of trails, 121 state parks, and the list goes on. So we work with the Trust for Public Land, is a nationally recognized organization, to evaluate where Pennsylvania's open spaces are and who has access and who doesn't. So all of these reports are all posted on DCNR's outdoor recreation page, web page now. And so if you want any more information on any of the data that I give you glimpses of today, you can read more on on our web page today. So we asked Pennsylvanians how they participate in outdoor recreation, and we're thrilled to report that Pennsylvanians love outdoor recreation. And I'm sure most of you, or all of you on the phone today have probably found the outdoors, found some solace in the outdoors during the epidemic that we're all facing. And I know for me personally, being able to walk out my front door and head to the woods is what keeps me sane and keeps me getting from one day to the next. But we found that 90% of Pennsylvanians participated in outdoor recreation this past year. The younger that you are, the more often that you participate. The higher income, the more money you make, the more often you participate. So high income respondents participated almost weekly. Our lower income were more likely to not participate in outdoor recreation. So 14% of our respondents never participate in outdoor recreation, and that was related to income levels. We learned that nearly 90% of Pennsylvania's outdoor enthusiasts said that outdoor recreation is an essential part of their lives. 80% want to participate more. That number rises to 90% if you're of the 18 to 35-year-old crowd. If you're a senior citizen over 65, that number drops to 69%. There was an overwhelming response that our youth are not spending enough time outdoors, and I'm sure that is a concern of those of you that are on the call today. So we asked our outdoor enthusiasts what they'd like to do and gave them a choice of 20 activities. And the number one activity by far was hiking, followed by walking. And you can see the rest of the choices that are down there. When it comes to water-based activities, kayaking is about 8 on the list, and fishing is a little bit further down the list. When we compare this to random sample surveys that we've done in the past, the difference between Pennsylvanians and our outdoor enthusiasts is that hiking and camping aren't even in the top 10. So our Pennsylvanians, their top answers are walking, visiting historic sites, scenic driving, the same, 3 of the 5 same responses, but hiking and camping don't show up on that list. So we'll be working with Dr. Zuks from Geisinger Medical System to help implement the plan. And he recently shared some of his research with us. And he shared that hiking, biking, and camping really are activities that once kids under the age of 18 learn those activities, that will lead into other activities down the road. And what I found really interesting was that will lead to volunteering. And I do want to thank all of you on the call today for all that you're doing to support the waterways of the Poconos and ensure that there are protections in place. And that requires a heck of a lot of volunteering and advocacy. And we're looking at making sure that the next generation is also there to continue to be stewards of the outdoors. And interesting enough, if we can get kids to hike and kids to bike and kids to camp, those are activities that will last a lifetime and can lead into other activities down the road. So we learned in our research that gender and age matters, and some of this is kind of a no-brainer, meaning that men fish more than women. So the blue line is men and the red line is women. And older folks, age 65 and older, they enjoy bird watching and wildlife watching. And wildlife watching and bird watching has been on the rise during the spring of this year. And I've read lots of folks are taking up bird watching more than ever before. But our use of outdoor recreation is impacted by your gender as well as age. So we asked our Pennsylvanians, where do they go? So when they visit outdoor recreation places, we find that about half of the respondents go close to home. They're going to local and county parks, trails, open spaces. About 24% go to state parks, state game lands, state forest lands. 4% go to federal facilities. Pennsylvania doesn't have a lot of federal land, unlike Colorado, Wyoming, and some of the western states. And then the private facilities would be golf courses, gyms, outdoor driving ranges, or some kind of private outdoor facility. And then 16% of our respondents did not visit any of those places over the past year. That number increases to 30% for seniors over the age of 65. Our focus groups told us that they stay close to home, that they visit their neighborhood community parks, trails due to convenience, proximity, and safety. So we asked our outdoor enthusiasts, what's one activity that you would like to try, an activity that you've never done before that you would like to try? And this was a bit of a surprise to us. This word cloud came out with kayaking the #1 answer by far. 833 respondents wrote in that they were interested in trying kayaking. The closest other response was rock climbing at 288 and motorized trail use at 260. So we had nearly 7,000 people write in something related to this activity, and by far the #1 answer was kayaking. So we asked our outdoor enthusiasts how we can help them participate more in outdoor recreation. And after the #1 answer was related to maintenance. So make sure that the parks and trails that you have are clean and that they're safe and they're ready to use. Make sure you take care of existing infrastructure before you build new. But by far, the top facility that was talked about, over 2,000 comments related to trails, every aspect imaginable related to trails, we received a comment. So about 1,000 of the responses were related to non-motorized trails, and another 1,000 were related to motorized trails. So we did hear from a very strong motorized trail contingency about the importance of wanting trail systems, particularly in state forests, but they want trails just like the non-motorized community does. One of the post-COVID impacts has been the increase in trail use. So we have documented and worked with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council on the use of trails, vastly different in the spring of 2020 versus the spring of 2019. We have about 20 counters across the state of Pennsylvania, and we are tracking a tremendous amount of increased use on our trails. One of our trail providers said that every day is like a weekend now, and that their parking lots are just as packed during the week as they are during the weekend. One of our polls asked if respondents had easy access to water-based recreation like swimming pools, lakes, and streams. 51% agreed with that statement, but half did not agree with that statement. And that response was impacted by where you live in Pennsylvania. So when the Center for Survey Research does the polling for Pennsylvania, this is the regional split of the state that they use. And and I pulled out information just for this webinar today that showed that the Northeast agreed with that statement less than Central Pennsylvania. So the Northeast is saying that they have less access to water than Central Pennsylvania. So that was the lowest regional response of all 6 responses. So I'm going to go through each of the 5 priorities relatively quickly from a high-level perspective. And we looked at each of these priorities. This is the 3rd time around that we have tackled health and wellness. It's a really complex topic, and it's not been easy to address the obesity challenges of Pennsylvanians, and we're still treading water on that one. And in addition to that, we have now added mental health issues, and we have these little pesky insects that are also impacting our outdoor recreation. So Pennsylvanians told us in the surveying that 65% agree that parks, trails, and open space are an essential part of our healthcare system, and that these mosquitoes and ticks keep 36% of Pennsylvanians from enjoying outdoor recreation. Pennsylvania is now #1 in the nation for Lyme disease. And the challenge this spring with Lyme disease is that the symptoms of Lyme disease are similar to COVID. And so increasingly, it's with the spread of Lyme disease, it's making it even more difficult to determine what you're sick from, and considering the symptoms are very similar. But we need to remember that for those that are interested in enjoying the outdoors, the threat of Lyme disease can impact their willingness in going out. We work with the Department of Health a lot, and we've learned over and over again that we have to figure out ways to make the healthy choice the easy choice, and that we have to bring our trails home, so that for those of us that have the benefit of living close to a trail, it's a whole lot easier to just take your bike out of your garage and get right on a trail via a bike lane to the trail, or walk via sidewalk to a trail. But one of our public comments that we received shared just how complicated it can get to try to get your bike on the back of your van and snacks ready, and he would use the trail more often if the trail was close to home. So when it came to our recommendations, we know we need to continue to educate on the connection between health and the outdoors. We've been supporting programs like Philly PHL, Pittsburgh RX, Centered Outdoors, and we'd like to be able to support more of those kinds of programs across Pennsylvania. And a big priority is creating more walking and biking networks, so folks can walk and bike safely and be able to walk to a park, bike to a trail without having to use a car or public transportation to get there. The second priority of the plan is something we've never done before, and became so important in our planning process that for the first time ever, we took the priority and said, this is the name of the plan. And we had named this plan back in February, again, before COVID and before Black Lives Matters and the responses of the past spring. So we believe it's really important that everyone has access to a park, access to a trail, access to green spaces, and that a huge focus of the plan going forward will be ensuring access for all. We learned in the process that 52% of Pennsylvanians agree they can safely walk to a public park, but that means that half cannot. Males agree to that statement more than females. Nearly 70% of Pennsylvanians agree they can safely access a trail within 15 minutes of where they live. The higher income respondents agree to that more than lower, and white respondents agree to that more than Black Pennsylvanians. State Parks is also working on Penn's Parks for All, and also has done a lot of research. And through that polling and that research, we learned that 41% of Black people say that not having transportation or access to public transportation was a constraint to visiting a state park. And then we learned that white versus Black responses had a significantly different response to Pennsylvania state parks are for people like me. So our 4 recommendations, you can see there on the screen. We want to make sure that we can provide opportunities for everyone to engage in the outdoors, not just those that are young, not just those that have the income to do so. And we want to make sure that the Pennsylvania places fit the needs of the people who live nearby, and that we have an equitable distribution of outdoor recreation across Pennsylvania. And one of the challenges that our state environmental agencies have, particularly the Game Commission and DCNR, is that we have the least diverse workforce out of state government. So DCNR and the Game Commission are at the bottom in terms of our lack of diversity, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us to be able to create a more diverse workforce and volunteer base. Our third priority was on sustainable systems. Pennsylvania has a very, very rich, vast open space and outdoor recreation system. And that system requires a lot of caregiving and a lot of resources in order to take care of what we've created over the last century. And a lot of our state parks in particular are really being overused right now. You'll see a statistic shortly about the increased use of our state parks. So it's really hard to balance the desire for people to want to go to parks right now and the ability to care for those places. This outdoor recreation plan addresses climate change for the first time in an outdoor recreation plan. So there are specific recommendations related to that. And we know that it's important to continue to encourage folks, encourage volunteerism in the outdoors. So in our polling, we learned that 79% of Pennsylvanians agree that it's important for government to invest in sustainable park practices. And we learned that half of our respondents worry about a changing climate and how that's going to impact their outdoor recreation experiences. That number rises to 64% if you are between the ages of 18 and 35. So we received from a forestry lion poll that the question was asked, should DCNR add more state forest acres? Should we reduce them? Should we keep the number the same? And Pennsylvanians told us 61% that they would like to see more state forest acres added in the next decade. One of our plan actions is to add an additional 100,000 acres of open space in important areas over the next 5 years. And we've also have an action in which we plan to plant another 100,000 trees in important open space areas. So one of our public responses shared with us that it's important to conserve and protect the land so that he can continue showing his children the beauty of our state. And it will encourage them to protect it as well as be more active in curbing climate change and keep our planet and all things that live here safe. Here are the recommendations for sustainable systems. We've got to figure out how to fix it first and take care of existing resources. We need to protect and conserve our lands and waters. That's something that your organization does and is committed to doing. We need to foster stewardship of Pennsylvania's recreation areas, and we need to design those areas to minimize impacts on the land and conflicts to user groups. Our fourth priority, we always have to have a priority related to money because money is what helps fund all the activities that you see here. And that one of the priorities of DCNR is to create an outdoor recreation office for the state of Pennsylvania. 14 other states have created an office, and that helps facilitate partnerships with REI, LL Bean, bike businesses and lots of outdoor businesses. And you'll see shortly a slide on the impact of outdoor recreation in Pennsylvania. But we also need new funding sources. So we do need advocates to help us to continue to ensure that our current funding sources, the Keystone Fund, the Land and Water Conservation Fund, are protected, particularly during challenging economic times that we're facing. Again, that we need to make sure that the funding is available to protect and continue to do the great work that we've been doing. So Pennsylvanians told us that 70% agree that outdoor recreation amenities such as parks and trails attract new residents and businesses to their communities. The number one funding priority that Pennsylvanians told us was, again, maintenance. Make sure we take care of what we have before we acquire new and build new. But the second funding priority that I'm sure your group would be interested in is to protect wildlife and fish habitat. And for the first time ever in our polling for an outdoor recreation plan, water moved into the third spot. So we're seeing a greater interest in the protection of water, which is good for the work of your organization. And that's that third item that is on the screen here. We asked local providers the same question. So what would be the highest priority for funding? They were only allowed to pick one item. So at the end of the day, choose one. And this screen shows a comparison between responses from our 2014 survey, those are in blue, and the green bar, which was our responses in 2019. And in 2014, we were still feeling the effects of the 2008 recession, and maintenance and how they were going to continue to care for their parks and trails was a higher priority than 2019. I suspect that number is going to go back up again with the years to come and are recovering from the economic challenges of what we have going on in 2020. But their number one answer is also maintenance. Second was bike paths, and third was greenways and trails. But be aware that further down on the list is restoring damaged rivers and streams and protecting wildlife and fish habitat. So the audience that we polled, these local recreation and park and conservation providers at the local level, see those priorities that I showed you were important to Pennsylvanians on the screen before. They're much further down on the list when they're up against taking care of existing facilities. So we asked the public what would be the top recreation facility investments that we should be making. And again, we compared the results to 2014. The green was from our recent polling, 2019. The blue was from 2014. And trails and the interest in trails continues to grow. So that number jumped another 7% from 2014 to 2019. Community and regional parks stayed about the same. The interest in environmental education and nature facilities increased in 2019. We were kind of surprised about that. And then the opportunities for water-based recreation, boating, kayaking was about the same between 2014 and 2019, sitting in the number 4 spot. So our 4 recommendations for outdoor recreation is to protect and expand the public and private investments in outdoor recreation, build those strategic coalitions to maximize the economic impacts of outdoor recreation. We want to better market Pennsylvania as an outdoor recreation destination. We have a fabulous outdoor recreation system, and we want others to be able to come to Pennsylvania and experience the beauty of the state. And then we know their benefits and impacts of nature-based solutions to addressing community needs. So these are some infographics that have, one is in the plan and one was recently developed by DEP for their water plan website. And something that I thought you would all be interested in is the power of outdoor recreation as an economic powerhouse in Pennsylvania. The billions of dollars that are generated from outdoor activities, from boating, fishing, water guided, the jobs that are created. Both of these infographics document the impact of outdoor recreation in Pennsylvania. This is a new infographic that we've documented the outdoor recreation equipment sales. So if any of you have tried to buy a bike lately, I'm told that you can't buy a bike until probably early 2021. I've heard that the bike shops have such a backlog in repairing bikes. My husband just recently tried to buy a canoe and had to wait several months until the canoe came in. So any of us looking for outdoor gear these days might have some challenges with finding it. But again, that shows the power of outdoor recreation and the outdoor recreation industry. This is new marketing from our tourism bureau in Pennsylvania. They are marketing staycations, and there's that number of state park reservations. Our state park reservations have increased 139% since this time last year, comparing 2019 and 2020. So our Department of Community and Economic Development is promoting Pennsylvanians to get outside. Governor Wolf is promoting Pennsylvanians to go to state parks. Secretary Levine, on most of her daily talks, it talks about the importance of getting outside for our mental and our physical health. And this is, we're increasingly working with the Department of Community and Economic Development on promoting our outdoor recreation resources. Technology was an interesting priority. We actually took this to a vote with our advisory committee. We had a 40-member advisory committee, and there were some members who thought we should focus on technology and some members who thought we shouldn't, and that some felt like we should overlay technology in the 4 other priorities. And in the end, our committee voted to include technology as the 5th priority of the plan. And as it turned out, we all need technology this spring in order to be able to work virtually, and it has become such a bigger factor today than it was last year. So we've also learned that a lot of we have state parks that are not as connected as others should be, and that our survey results showed us that nearly 1 in 4 Pennsylvanians said having no availability of Wi-Fi makes them less likely to participate in outdoor recreation. The younger that you are, that number rises to 1 out of 3. They also told us that folks use the internet, and this is no surprise to those of us on the phone today, but use the internet to find places to go read reviews. Folks use a GPS to navigate through their outdoor experiences, and then they post their experiences on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The 4 recommendations for technology are to increase mobile connectivity in our outdoors. We have some state parks that are not connected, and we are looking at opportunities to tell folks where they can get connected, so that maybe there be a hotspot at a state park office or a hotspot at a pavilion, that some folks want to go to a state park or to a state forest and disconnect. And we realize that some want to disconnect and some want to keep connected, and that we would advertise where you can get connected if you would like to do so, and to make those hotspots available in our outdoor places. We know there's a lot of best practices relating to emerging technologies. We're not suggesting the forming and creating of new apps. There's plenty of apps out there now that we could help outdoor enthusiasts or newbies that are experiencing or that are interested in outdoor recreation connect to new technology to help them better connect to the outdoors. As I said earlier, we worked with the Trust for Public Land to analyze our GIS information, and one of our analyses was of access to Pennsylvania, to water access to Pennsylvania. So we pulled out this map for this presentation that shows you where the water access is. Now, this is public water access, and you'll see that the areas that are in red here, so Monroe County has a number of red areas. Pike County has some red areas also. And those are areas that are high need for water access. Now, one of the challenges is you can't just build water. You can't just create a water spot like you can create a trail access or you can create a park access. And that some of those red areas in Monroe and Pike County are likely the Kittatinny Ridge and ridge tops, that there isn't any water nearby. But if there is water nearby, we will be working with county planners and regional planning organizations to further analyze this data and to see where we can help create more water access in places where this mapping has showed us that we have a deficiency of access to public waterways, so that we believe that people will continue to care about water when they can have easy access to water, and they can dip their toes in the creek, and they can turn rocks over, and they can fish, and they can kayak in the stream. So if we can make sure that people have access to water, that they will have a greater appreciation for the importance of clean water to their communities and to their to their own outdoor recreation interests. So through the work with Trust for Public Land, we have analyzed counties with the highest need of water access, and we have ranked the counties 1 to 67, and Monroe is sitting at the number 9 spot as ranked need, in which 66% of those in Monroe County cannot access a public water access area within a 10-minute drive of their home. So there is a web page on DCNR's website titled Pennsylvania's Outdoor Recreation Plan, and every one of the data sets that I've talked about today, the lion polls, the provider survey, the online survey, the work of the Trust for Public Land, all those reports have been finalized and they are currently posted on the plan. We just received approval of our plan on Tuesday from the National Park Service, so we haven't posted the final plan on our website, but that will be coming soon. We will be offering additional webinars on the plan in October to provide more education about the plan. When folks apply to DCNR for funding, our applicants need to talk about how their plan will help implement Pennsylvania's new outdoor recreation plan. So the plan will go from 2020 to 2024, and it's a 5-year plan that we will be working with other state agencies and local governments and local government associations to figure out our implementing priorities for 2020 and into 2021. So that is our next step here, is to pivot from a big focus on planning to a big focus on implementation. And I've put here on the screen the questions that I posed to all of you when I first started. So how would we, what suggestions might you have to implement the ideas that you heard today in our COVID impacted situation? And how do we foster a more welcoming outdoor environment as we continue to implement our vision, which is a welcoming outdoor recreation system for all? So that concludes my formal presentation, and I was hoping, Emily, that to have some comments and create a little chat dialogue. So I will stop there and turn this back over to you.
Great. Thank you for such a great presentation, Diane. I do have some questions in the queue here, so I'll read them off to you and then we can keep moving with discussion. We actually have a decent amount of time left, so could probably go for a little over 5-minute discussion per question. So question 1 is, thank you so much for this report. Excuse me, let me start over. Thank you so much. This report is wonderful, and we appreciate all the outreach to get good input from PA residents. We are hearing both in the downstream areas of the Delaware watershed and the Poconos region that many places are very full now with COVID. How can we best use this report to show elected officials our parks and public lands need to be fully funded, and that we indeed need more protected land all over the watershed, both in rural areas and in cities? What is happening with the funding legislation that was sadly going through the PA legislature that resulted in not funding these important assets of Pennsylvania?
Wow, that's a really big question.
It's in the chat, Diane, if you need to revert back to it.
So I am pleased to report that in April, we received a record number of grant applications from land trusts and local municipalities. I think it was, almost 500 applications. And we were really surprised. Many local communities had shut down with COVID. They weren't meeting. And somehow local providers were able to figure out how to finish their grant applications and submit them online. And we had a fabulous response. And we're currently right now reviewing those applications for land acquisition and trail development and river restoration and a whole host of things. And Governor Wolf has ensured that the special funds, the Keystone funds, the funds that support a lot of what I've talked about today, are currently protected by the governor. He fully supports making sure that we have the funding available to do a grant announcement in the fall. But there certainly are movements afoot to redirect those funds. So it's important that organizations like Penn Future and the Pocono Waters continues to talk to your local elected officials about the importance of land acquisition and trail development and all of the kinds of activities that the DCNR supports, as well as the Department of Community and Economic Development also has funding. So PennDOT has funding. We all have funding that is here to help support the infrastructure. And there is the highest demand ever that we have seen across Pennsylvania for outdoor recreation needs. Our facilities, you saw that we're getting 100 to 200% increase in trail use. So we absolutely need existing funds protected And there's certainly, over the past years, there was additional opportunities to look at new funding sources. But given our economics, we want to protect what we currently have and make sure that in 2020, we're able to direct those funds back out into local communities. And the same thing is there in 2021, as we have to, we as a state, look at our budget challenges in the time ahead. So we are also hearing at the federal level full funding of the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which has only happened maybe 3 times in 50 years. So if we can get full funding of the federal dollars and get 12 million to Pennsylvania again, that is especially critical. But we need to get local officials out into our parks and trails and see what's going on. And I'm assuming many of them are out there recreating themselves with our limited other opportunities that we can do. I don't know, Emily, would you have anything else to add from your organization's perspective?
I can say that if anyone on this webinar is interested in advocating for the parks, they can contact us at our email that I'll put up one more time before the end of here, and we can help you get into those offices, or write letters or anything like that. So we'd have no problem helping steer you in the right direction from here. Okay, we're going to move on to the next question for time's sake. So in the regarding upgrading and redesignation of Pennsylvania streams, there are some groups that are getting resistance from different organizations in the community. So we're working hard to use various mechanisms, including DCNR conservation plans, to work to upgrade healthy streams that run through public land, which is done under the DEP. How can we do this in a more holistic approach, maybe something similar to the sister organizations do with the Fish and Boat Commission and Class A streams, or how can we help?
So I shared earlier with Faith and Emily that one of my experiences is that I served as a DCNR lead for Lehigh Valley Greenways for 15 years. And one of the Northampton County priorities, particularly with Bushkill Township, was the upgrading of Sobers Run to EV status. Sobers Run runs through Jacobsburg State Park, Jacobsburg Environmental Education Center. It has 2 different names. And we used a provision that's available in the legislation about the importance of the resource to the importance of the stream to a state park, to a township, to conservation efforts. And we worked with Bushkill Township on so Bushkill Township passed an open space referendum. They created an official map, one of the few municipalities in the state that did an official map for stream protection or for open space protection. So they've got a very unusual official map, and that might be something that for a future webinar. But they, as township officials, had a very, very strong conservation ethic and protected the Sobers Run through other means as well as through the regulatory means. So we worked on that for 10 years and eventually was able to get Sobers Run redesignated to EV status. So just today, my river specialist who works on activities like this just scheduled a meeting to talk more about how we could do more Bushkill Township, Jacobsburg, Sobers Run type efforts to protect the EV status of current streams and also look at upgrading important streams because there are important open spaces around them. So I think that's a great opportunity for us to work closer together and to be able to work closer with DEP on how we can advance those kinds of protections. So we're talking about it, but it's, again, it took a very long time to do one stream. And we had to be extremely persistent, and we had to have very, very strong support from the Bushkill Township supervisors. And because it was locally supported, so first you have to convince the local elected officials, and then if you can get them behind this, they're a stronger force to be able to push that forward. Emily, you want to add anything?
No, I think you answered that question pretty well. I just want to let you know that our Pocono Waters Group is willing to work with DCNR to help you in any way we can push those efforts forward. Okay, we have a third question, and it is the DRBC or the Delaware River Basin Commission aware of this plan?
Of the outdoor recreation plan? I'm not sure. As I said, we have done a lot of outreach, and we will be in the education phase next. So we can make sure that they get a copy of this, or that they're aware. If there's someone that we should get it to, happy to send them a copy, happy to send them their way. We're going to be thinking about how best to distribute copies in a virtual world. We always believe that it's just nice to be able to hold up a plan copy. Some of our sister agencies only have plans that are all electronic. PennDOT plans are all electronic now. And we're just starting to have those conversations on how many copies of the plan do we print, and then how do we get them out there when we're all teleworking. So we have to do some work on making sure that everybody knows this plan is available, and that try to get as much engagement as we can on implementing it. A plan means nothing if we don't implement. So it's an exhausting process to do any plan. This is advice to all of you, but you need to put as much energy into implementing the plan as you did planning it. And it's a little tricky when you're done a plan and you need to mobilize. DCNR has a 20-member recreation work team that will be engaging to try to figure out what our priorities are and how we can best implement. But good question. We'll make sure we can get this out to whomever you think we should get it to, and can work with Faith and Emily to do that.
Great. We could definitely help you with contacts at the River Basin Commission. That's not a problem at all. And also connections with the SRBC to make sure both basin commissions get this information. We have one last question, and it states that there is so much good data in this plan. Will you be doing memes and other ways to highlight and get it circulated in social media channels? For example, your native plants memes are a hit.
We're going to be working with our social media staff at DCNR. Our next move is to create a story map on DCNR's website, similar to what DEP did for their water plan. So we'll be pulling out some of the sound bites and creating more graphics and an easier way for people to consume the plan. So yes, that's a really great idea. We'll be having more discussions about that. And if anyone has any ideas, please email me them. We have a lot of data, and it's a little hard to figure out what exactly will resonate, and what people will be interested in.
Okay. It looks like we have one more question. It says, DCNR has helped fund protection of public lands. We appreciate that so much. How do you work with the land conservancies to protect more land, especially knowing many places are inundated now with heavy use during the time of COVID? And is there anything that we can help with?
So DCNR formed a conservation landscape program 15 years ago. And as I said earlier, I supported Lehigh Valley Greenways for 15 years and worked with the Wildlands Conservancy and the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. We have a similar effort with Pocono Forests and Waters, and that is supported by the Pennsylvania Environmental Council and our DCNR staff. And Tim Dukin is a district forester who is actively involved in that. But both of those conservation landscapes have always been very supportive of land conservation and working directly with the land conservancies. So we, for example, Northampton County has county funding available, and one of the challenges for land trusts is always to figure out where to find the match. So DCNR land conservation funding is a 50-50 matching grant. And so in the early years of land conservation in Monroe County, when there was the county bond issue, that helped protect a lot of open space in Monroe County, because those counties that had the match could develop projects and ask for bigger sums of money and be able to do higher land protection. So pre-COVID, we were hoping for more bond issues and more return to county bond issues, local referendums. I'm not quite sure what the future holds on that now, but there is a lot through our conservation landscape program, and I would just encourage you to make sure that you're connected to Pocono Forests and Waters, that conservation landscape, and that work with them to make sure that you're protecting the most important areas of your Northeast here. I will also add, we're doing a lot on climate change, and there's a greater emphasis on our corridors and our Kittatinny ridges and our ridge areas. So I think as we move forward, we're going to be prioritizing better our land conservation efforts to make sure that we're directing the resources we have to the most important places of Pennsylvania that need protection, or areas that are being heavily used now, and we need to expand opportunities in some places. 85% of DCNR's lands are where 15% of the population lives. So a lot of our 2 million acres of forest lands, our state parks, are up in north central Pennsylvania. I personally believe we need to make sure that we have more open spaces closer to where people live, and closer to our cities, to make sure that it's easy access for people who live in urban environments to easily get to outdoor places. So are there any other questions?
That was our last question, Diane. So first off, I'd like to give a round of applause and a big thank you to Diane for joining us today as our guest speaker.
It's been my pleasure.
If you have more questions after the webinar, you can email them to ourpoconowaters@gmail.com, and I can forward them off to Diane. And she also had her email on her slides. Feel free to contact her as well. If you're interested in more info on EV streams, please follow our YouTube page for more webinars. We have a bunch from last year posted, and our first one of this year is also already posted there. And you can check out our awesome pledge videos that were kicked off at the beginning of the month. And also, please remember to check out our website for more information and how to take the pledge to defend our Pocono waters. We want to help elevate your voice for your home streams, and we're always here to help. So thank you everyone for joining us today.